Dr. Allison with us, part two, really to look forward to, but we have a little bit just to finish off there because in the first part about the changes in the UK, where they're going, then sudden changes. Was that a good statement, the second one, for the Isle of Man, because they're keeping things as they are and taxing more?
I mean, what's good for the Isle of Man is to have a stable, productive relationship with the UK government, whoever's in. But more than that, in terms of the markets, is to have that economic stability. Now, it's really hard to have economic stability when you've got tensions coming from all sides. We've had the war in Ukraine, which is ongoing. We've had problems in the Middle East, problems in the Far East now, which all put pressures on the cost of living on the Isle of Man and on government objectives. I think the present UK government have introduced an amount of certainty in the markets now. We've already seen that the pound go back up to normal values, which obviously has effects on us in terms of trade. We've seen interest rates stabilise and hopefully start coming down a little bit. We've seen, through the concerted efforts of both the UK government and the EU, a stabilisation of gas prices as well on the wholesale market. So that is good for people on the Isle of Man. But slightly outside of our control, we still need to look after ourselves to a degree and make sure that we've got sustainable finances and the right economic policies to take our island forward.
Am I right in thinking, though, we do have a debt? I mean, you say we're not allowed to run a debt, but I'm hearing that the bonds are out and everything else. We are in quite deep, are we not, into the markets in some way? Explain to me.
We do have bond issues that are being, we pay interest on. So Manx Utilities have a degree of bonds that are going to be repaid next decade, and have a fund that's being built up to repay that. In the same way as the previous administration took out a bond in terms of ESG and sustainability, which was 400 million at a very, very low interest rate at the time, but that will need to be repaid in 30 years. But what that does is gives you the amount of money to invest, both in terms of getting revenue, but also in the infrastructure that we'll need if we're going to actually meet our ambitions in terms of the economic strategy.
These debts we have, though, we're running at interest rates that are on the market rates, are they? Or are they fixed? Or?
No, they're fixed.
Oh, right.
So the Manx Utilities bonds are fixed at around, they're various figures, I think off the top of my head, either 4 or 4.5%. The sustainability bond that we took out in the last administration is pegged at 1.6%. So that's significantly below the current rate. And a lot of these reserves are invested by specialists for the benefit of the Isle of Man people, and that interest is then used to actually afford some of the extra things that we need.
We mentioned the MU, and of course we are getting this electricity fixed, but we're paying for it. The taxpayers are going to be, we're just rubbing Peter to pay Paul almost, aren't we? It's pushing it off into...
It's stabilising it. When we were faced back at the beginning of October, if you remember, wholesale gas prices had hit a record high of £6 £6 on the open market. There were plans by Manx Utilities to have to put up prices by about 85% to meet that, which would have been an amazing jolt for people, and we were worried that on top of everything else would have tipped some people over the edge. So what we've done is just to try to bring in that stability and that certainty. Now, since then, prices have come down, so the actual cost to the Isle of Man taxpayer of balancing this out hopefully will be minimised, but we will perhaps need to keep prices stable for quite a long period of time, perhaps not bring them down as much as we want to repay some of that. But we'll do that to just give people the certainty that they know what they'll be paying over the next 6 months in terms of electricity prices.
Okay, there's so many things in your area here, but looking forward to this year, are there anything that you are looking forward to?
Absolutely. It may sound funny, but I'm incredibly optimistic about where we as a community and as a nation are. Yes, there's lots of pessimism, there's lots of questions, there's lots of uncertainty. But when you look at government finances, if we do the right thing now, if we have that long-term viewpoint and we don't react to the next crisis that comes around the corner, we can get through this. But more than that, we can actually grow our economy, grow our population, improve public services without necessarily having to cut back in areas or put taxes up in other areas.
You need money to come in, don't you?
Absolutely.
You need to generate more money.
And what the economic strategy showed is that up until now, the government finances have been fairly stagnant, and we disproportionately tax people, either through national insurance, VAT or income tax. So what the long-term strategy is to broaden the base, so apply that tax more equally to more areas of our economy, but also to look at see how we can reduce the tax burden to individual working people as well.
And things like the 0-10, Guernsey, Jersey, I think they're all muting. I think Guernsey particularly is saying that we can't sustain this. I mean, will you go together? I mean, you have quite a lot of chit-chat between the islands.
We do. We meet quite regularly with the various chief ministers, but also on a Treasury basis. I'm meeting with some of the representatives of the Jersey Treasury fairly shortly to discuss the ways they're dealing with things.
You want to go together, do you? I mean, this is part of the plan.
I think in some areas we need to go together. For instance, with beneficial ownership, where we're being perhaps threatened by the EU in terms of blacklisting and things like that.
That's still. I thought that was no. That's
still ongoing.
Okay.
Unfortunately, labelling the Isle of Man as a tax haven and trying to bring barriers into our economic growth is still there, and so working together with the other Crown dependencies and the UK government is very worthwhile. However, we also are competitors because we're offering various financial products, and we're trying to recruit various people to the other islands.
Well, this race for the bottom, of course, has been called in the past.
No, now I think that has changed, because I think all of the Crown dependencies and most politicians are aware that international reputations are invaluable. And so it's very important that we aspire to be well-regulated, well-recognised jurisdictions. That's how we get people to invest on the Isle of Man, not that we're running to the bottom, not that we're taking in dirty money.
Yeah.
And the advances we've had in terms of anti-money laundering and combating some of the financing of terrorism really are the best in the world.
Okay. You're going to say open and transparent and all that sort of thing. So I need to ask you this one, and with your doctor's hat and probably a little bit, the Dr Ranson thing. Yep. I don't think you've said anything about this much. I mean, everyone's not said much about it, and they can't really say it's been, held up by the courts now. The decision's been made. How do we feel as an island when we peer into this one corner of the government and all this failings were shown? I mean, this is not pleasant reading, and it's certainly not happy on us as people who live here to know that people in government, the civil servants and others, have been doing what they've been doing.
No, you're absolutely right. I was involved in that. I worked with Dr Ranson, and I was called to give evidence in the tribunal, and had to give a subpoena. It doesn't reflect well on anyone, and actually, Alf Cannon as Chief Minister, I think, has been very clear about that, and there have been significant changes, not only to personnel within the higher echelons of the civil service,
no one got sacked,
but there have been changes of personnel at very high levels.
Yes.
But more than that, there's been a huge amount of work done in terms of the structure of government, and that will be coming forward. But a lot of work also been done in terms of the way government works and treats people within it. So, for instance, there was recently launched an integrity line where if people were worried and they wanted to whistleblow, they could phone a confidential number and report their concerns that would then be acted on. The interim chief secretary has been going around to every single department with an open door saying, tell me what you're worried about, let me act on this.
So you're happy about, or happier?
We've made a significant start in terms of recognising there's an issue and actually facing it head on. But that work has to carry on if we're going to instil a completely different culture within government.
Okay, we've got a minute left, but we're going to do a whole second section about something you particularly very keen to do, but just to outline the dying thing. I mean, this is finally coming up, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been quite passionate about in terms of changing some of the legislation on the Isle of Man is to enable assisted dying. There's been numerous debates over the last 2 decades of that in the Isle of Man. I've now been given leave to bring forward a private member's bill, which I'm very grateful for. So now is the time to do that.
And we'll, talk more about that, because we've been talking about it for a long time, haven't we? To finish with, I mean, the usual thing, can you give yourself a score, please, out of 10?
I'd normally give a 7, and I'll probably stick with that. I've been watching Strictly recently, and their scores are much higher, actually.
They are, aren't they?
But no, I mean, as with anything in government, there's always more you can do.
Yeah.
I think We're over a year into the current administration. We've laid the foundations for some really exciting work. Now is the time that we have to deliver.
And albeit you're inside that tent,
Yep.
how do you think the Alf Cannon government is doing?
I think it's been doing very, very well. I'm just sorry that all the external forces have knocked us off course slightly, but there's an incredible passion and commitment there to do the right thing for this island, and it's great to be part of that.
Number?
I give it an 8 out of 10.